Alright guys, so this is recorded separate from the webinar just to make it a little bit quicker to upload to YouTube, so I won't have to edit it and then upload the other webinar. So this one is recorded separately from the webinar, and I'm going to show you just a little bit quicker of what we learn in the webinar. So the first things that I was going to show you, or that I did show some of you, were the very basic tools of getting to know Maya. Now I'm using Maya 2015, and this is for complete beginners, people who have never opened Maya and want to get to understand the interface of it. And then even just basic navigation controls, some of the basic tools that we have here on the side panel, the channel box, all these icons up here, and these menus up here in the viewport. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, if you've always messed with Maya interface and you're clicking windows to close, say you close this and you close that, and then your Maya version doesn't look exactly with the same windows that I have open, just go ahead and restore everything. You go to I believe display, user interface elements, and then you go to, you can do a show all UI elements or restore user interface elements. So go ahead and click on one of those and that should pop open. Here, let me do it. That should pop open all of your windows again. Now we're not going to be using this tool settings just yet, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. But you should see your perspective. If you have your 4-pane windows open, you can go ahead and press spacebar wherever you hover your mouse over. And then here you're going to see your, like for example, your perspective. So let's just go ahead and focus on one of these right now. And we're going to look at how to add objects. And that's how we work with Maya, adding, creating objects. So in order to do that, you go up here to create, or you can select any one of these objects if you're under the polygons tab menu here. But for this purpose, we're going to be using the create window here. Go to polygon primitives, because for video games and film, we mostly use polygons nowadays. Now, NURBS, they used to be used back in the old days, and some of them still use it, like for eyes and things that are like very, very smooth. You still see NURBS primitives, but for right now, we're always modeling using polygons, so we're going to go ahead and stick with polygons. And then here you're going to see usually you'll have this interactive creation checked on, so I'm going to leave it how normally you would have it. And we're going to look at anything here, so you can go ahead and click on sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, and plane. These are the most popular ones. And then you have your torus, prism, pyramid, or whatever you want to click on over here. Even a soccer ball. I'm going to do the soccer ball just because it sounds cool. And then I'm just going to, you see this little crosshair with an arrow? It means you can interactively click, hold, and drag. And you're going to create a soccer ball, which is awesome. It's a huge soccer ball. We're like this size. So that is how you create things in Maya. Especially when you're going to start modeling any characters or anything like that, you always come up here to polygons. And you can start off with, say, a cube. So again, click. You can click and drag what you want for a cube. And then you let go and you see an up arrow. So now you need to click and drag up to define the height of it. So that is how you define objects or create objects using interactive creation. Now I usually like to turn this off just because I want to click and have it appear there already. So if I uncheck interactive creation, if I go ahead and delete these, and I can quickly just click cube and there it is. I don't have to create it or anything. I don't have to drag. So that's usually what I like to work with. Yeah, if you want to keep interactive creation in there, go ahead and leave it on there, but I just like to just quickly just click, drag, resize it, and you're done. None of this interactive creation. But again, that's preference. It's up to you. So that is how you create polygons and objects here. So if you wanted to model anything, you would start with very basic spheres. You know, you have a sphere, you have a cube here. Things that you can create. You have that cylinder, the cone, that little donut. Donuts. You have a pyramid here, right? Now, all of these objects have settings that you can create in the very beginning so you can get started. So for example, if I'm going to model a house, I want more edges here, and we're going to get into advanced modeling a little later on, but I just want to show you that you have settings or parameters that you can adjust when you first create them. So in order to access these, we're going to go over here to your channel box. If you do not have your channel box open, if it looks like this, you'll see it on your right hand side. If not, you'll see it up here. It says show hide channel box. So you click on it and it should look like this. Now, to access the settings for that cube, you'll see here it says input, and then you'll see polycube 1. So that's what you want to click on. When you click on that, you'll see the width, height, and depth, and then divisions. So to adjust the width, you can either input a value here, click on it, and say like 2. So that's going to adjust how wide this box is. The height, you can say 3. So it's 3 units up. And then the depth, you can say 2, doesn't matter. Right? That's how you adjust it. Now, the other way, the fancy way, is you just select the name. You see width. I'm not clicking on the input text here. I'm clicking on the name. Once you click on it, just go ahead and middle mouse, click and drag. You see when I middle mouse click, it turned into arrows, left and right, so you can drag left and right, and that's gonna automatically increase and decrease your values for you. So you can very quickly just come in here, click on the name, middle mouse, click and drag, and that's gonna adjust your measurements of the box. And then the exact same thing, but this time you're gonna add or remove edges. So you can see I'm just selected division width, the name, middle mouse, click and drag, and that is how you adjust edges. Right, so depending what I'm gonna model, I want to keep it fairly low resolution, low edges, so that I don't have so many points to work with once I go into modeling. So keep it low. Now, another thing, if you created these objects and you do not see this that says polycube and you don't see your settings, look up here. It says construction history on and off. You probably have this off if you do not see your settings. So if I have it off, watch this, and I create this, whatever that is, it's a tube, right? I'm gonna click on it, go over here to input. Notice I don't get input anymore. I don't see where I adjust anything. So if I click on this cylinder, I get input cylinder. I can adjust the radius, the height, the subdivisions going around it, and the height divisions, right? The top divisions. But if I select this tube, I don't have it. Why? Because I have construction history set to off. So turn it on. Go ahead and create a new one. There it is. And now if I click here, you'll see inputs, poly pipe, and now you see everything here that you can adjust. Thickness. Now in order to see these inputs, you have to select your object. So if I select the object, now you see things that you can mess with. When you deselect, you know, obviously there's nothing there. So that is how you create objects in Maya. Now let's look at how we can use the Let's see. I have my checklist here. So adding, creating polygons, your viewport, and your mouse control, which is very, very basic. Keep Windows is asking me, do you want to keep the color scheme? I want to keep my color schemes. Jeez. Thank you, Windows. So if you're new to Maya and you don't know how to move around your viewport, you want to do this in your perspective. So in Maya, you usually have 4 windows. These are your basic windows. You have your top view, which is up here. And then you have your front view, which is this view right here. And then you have your side view, which is over here. So these views are only flat views. You're looking at your objects from only one side, right? So only the top view, only the front, and only the side. But on this one up here, this is your perspective view. This one you can manipulate any angle camera view you want. But for these, you cannot change them. You can only zoom in, out, and move them left and right like that. Pan them around, right? Same thing with the front. Pan and then move. Same thing here. But on your perspective, this is the only one where you can move it around like that. You can rotate. So go to your perspective viewport, and then in order to go ahead and move around like this, you want to hold down Alt and then just click, left click. So I'm just gonna say click, not left click. So it's regular clicking in your mouse, right? Nobody writes click unless you want to access menu. So just hold down Alt and click, and then while you're clicking, you have to hold both of these together. Just click and move your mouse around left and right. And you'll notice that you can tumble. That's what they call it, tumbling. Tumbelina. Okay now. So all of your controllers, to navigate around the viewport, you have to hold down Alt. So, and you need a 3-button mouse. If you're using a pen tool or a stylus, hopefully you have one of those fancy ones that you can program the buttons. I do know some friends, and especially in other studios where I worked at, you can use a pen if you can program it, and it has to have specific buttons. But I'm more comfortable with the mouse, 3-button mouse. So holding down Alt and any one of the 3 buttons will do something in Maya. So hold down Alt and click will pan. Holding down again Alt and now just middle mouse, click and drag will pan. You just move left and right. And then a third one is holding down Alt, right click, and going left and right with your mouse again will zoom in and out. So those are your 3 main ways to navigate around your perspective viewport. So again, this is your holding down Alt, click, middle mouse, click and drag, or right click and drag. So that is your main 3 navigations and your perspective. Now in your side viewports, you cannot do the Alt and click because you can see you're getting a big no icon on your mouse. So you cannot tumble. You can only pan with your middle mouse or zoom, because this is, like I said, it's only one view, one flat view, what they call orthographic views. So you have perspective right here and orthographic views right here. So they're all flat views. You cannot tumble. You cannot tumbelina. Alright, so that is how you navigate in your viewports and how you use your mouse to move around. So that's pretty easy. So practice that. And even though it's easy, if you're a complete beginner, it takes practice. Just pause the tutorial, open Maya, and practice tumbling. Tumbling. Alright, so your gizmo. Now, what's your gizmo? It's not like Gremlin's gizmo. Your gizmo is this little arrow. See that arrow that appears right here? That's what you call your gizmo. It's just your tool, and it's a tool that you're mostly going to be using when you're doing anything, whether you're animating, you're modeling, or it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're always going to be using that gizmo tool. So in order to see what tool you're using, you can come over here on the left side on your panel over here. You'll see your first one is your selection tool, which I highly recommend. Just hover over it. You're gonna see the shortcut key for that is Q. So if you're over here, right, and you press Q, now you can pick objects only. You cannot move them. You can only pick them. This is kind of cool when you want to, like, say you want to show somebody something and you go, hey, look at this one, but you want to make sure you do not move it. You just go ahead and select this picker or the selection tool. The next one is the lasso tool. I rarely use this. I only use it when you want to select like a bunch of or group a lot of vertices. So vertices are the little points that you see here where the edges cross. You'll get points there, but they're not called points, they're vertices. So you can do vertex, go to the lasso tool, and then now you can click and go around the points that you want to select. So notice I selected all of these. So that's one way of selecting things. You can also use the first one, the selection tool, and just click and drag across. Now this will create a big square, which is what makes it different than the lasso tool. The lasso tool, you draw. You can actually draw. You just want to select that or this or the donut in the box, right? So you have to draw it in there. This select vertices, it's with the paint. So again, let's say I wanted to select vertices. To go into your points, you're gonna right click, go to vertex, but don't worry about that if you don't know how to do it. I know if you're a beginner. So you would go into this paint selection tool, and notice I get this big old circle. So if your brush, this is actually a brush, if your brush size is too big, hold down the letter B for brush, and then just click and drag left or right, so you can see how you adjust the brush size, right? And then from here you can paint vertices. So you click here, you click there, and notice as I'm painting here, I'm adding vertices. So that's another way. It's kind of weird. Don't recommend using this way, but it's there if you want it. It's good when you're rigging and you're ready to paint I don't know, paint effects or anything like that. But for right now, we're not going to get into that too much. So the next tool is this move tool, which is the move tool, the rotate tool, and the rescale tool or scale tool are the most popular that you're going to be using no matter what it is you're doing in the Maya software. So the move tool gives you these arrows. Now in Maya, you have 3 directions, or what we call 3 axes, that you can do things in, right? You have your up and down, which is what we call the Y axis. And how do I know it's the Y? You look over here in your channel box. As I move this box up, notice the values are going higher, right? As I move it down, the values here in the translate. What translate is just another fancy word for move, right? So translate Y, move Y. If I do translate X, look right here, translate X. This way is positive, this way will be negative, right? So again, Z, translate Z, you look over here. You can even do the same thing like I taught you before. Click on the name, middle mouse click and drag, and you're gonna move it by middle mouse clicking, dragging left and right. So that's another cool way. And then in Maya 2015, you have these little, let me show you. You see this little square right there? That means you're going to constrain your movement, which means you're only going to move in 2 axes. So pretend this is a wall. You can only move left, right, up, and down. So you cannot move forward and back. So as you click on this little wall right here, you can only move in that wall. Right, up, down, left, and right. You're not going to move it back or front or any other way. If I rotate this way and I select the red one, now I'm going to constrain or only move in the way that this wall, this little tiny wall looks like. So up, down, now back and front. And the same thing with the bottom one. This will only keep it on the ground. So this is only up, down, left, right, but it's only on the floor. It's not going up and down or anything like that. So that is how you move this tool. Now if you go in here and you see this little square in between the move tool, that is an odd direction. So who knows where it's gonna go. You click on this and you start moving it around. It can go up, down, it can go in depth. You notice it moved forward and down and left. So this is like all directions, right? Or you can just stick to each arrow, wait until they highlight, and you're only moving it in that one axis. So that is how you use the move tool. And then after this, pretty much everything is the exact same thing for the rotate and for the scale. It doesn't take a genius to figure any of this out. So you go to the rotate tool, and again you have this rotation angle. Now the rotate tool can be kind of weird because you can actually rotate in between the axes. So if you hover over the line, you'll notice it'll turn yellow. So that means you're snapped onto that axis only. So again, you go here to this one, rotate this way, and then the blue one, you rotate this way. Now if I go in between here, in between this red one and this other line, I can click here. That'll just be in all axis. So it can start doing some weird rotations like that. So you just want to be careful in which way you rotate it. But I always recommend just go ahead and select one of these axes. Alright. And then same thing over here. You can select rotate X, rotate Y, middle mouse click and drag, and then rotate Z. And then scale be down here. Again, same thing. You want to scale in the Y. So I was going to stretch it this way or make it flat. Scale in the X or in the Z. Or the cool thing about this one now is you can also scale in 2 axes. So, well, where did it go? So if I click and drag here, it kind of retains the volume just a little bit, but it's not the best, but it's pretty neat. So you click here and you're scaling against 2 axes here, 2 axes of evil. And then the middle one obviously will scale the entire thing as a whole. So usually if your model is too small, you want to scale it up, you want to use that one. Notice it's scaling all 3 of them. So you can even click and drag a lot of them, or just whatever you want. Middle mouse click and drag. Again, same thing. Or you can click and drag here, say 1, enter, and there you go. So that is how you use the gizmo, which is this, and your basic tools over here on the left. And the next thing I want to show you is the channel box. So the channel box is, well, actually your layers, I should say. I already showed you the top of the channel box is up here, but the layers is down here. Oh, one thing, just visibility, I guess, if you want to turn it on or off. I'm not going to go into this, but you're going to have to use the the outliner to turn it back on once you turn it off. But essentially you could do 0 for off, so you just turn off the visibility, or you can press 1 or type on for on. But again, don't worry about that. I'll get into that detail a little bit later. Let's go ahead and look at the channel box, your layers I should say. So for your layers, I'm just going to show you how to display and turn them on and off and use the template and all that kind of stuff, which is very basic. So let's go ahead and add some of these to your layers. Now you can create an empty layer first. So go to layers, create empty layer, and then add objects, or you can start selecting objects here. Like I just want those in a layer. Go to layers and then say create layer from selected. So that one's pretty easy. So I'm going to do that one. And then there is our layer 1. If I double click on it, I can rename it. So I can say, I don't know, my objects, and say save. And so there are my objects. Now you'll see this little V right here. V is for visibility. If I turn it off, you can toggle them on and off, right? Very quickly, if you have a large scene, you can just go, oh, it's too many stuff here. I just want to work on this. How do I turn everything off? You can put them in a layer, turn them off. Now you can quickly work on this. Just depends your taste now. When do you use this? It doesn't matter. It's your preference. Whenever you want to throw something in a layer, and then maybe you want to select certain things, but other objects you don't. I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's look here. So these are in a layer, right? Now I want to throw these other in a different layer. So I'm going to go, I'll show you the other way. Create empty layer. So here is my empty layer, right? If I turn on and off visibility, this one doesn't do anything. So on this one, I'm going to add, these are my bigger objects. So I'm going to select these, right click, and then say add selected object. So there you go. Now I have this layer, and then I have this layer. So that is how you add things into layers. This is pretty easy. Not just layers, create new layers, select your objects, add them on. That's pretty much it. Now let's see, you see this other little square here? Now this is to, you click on it, you're gonna get a T. Now you can notice that you can still see them there. Let me see if I can do Alt and B will change the background color of your viewport. So Alt and B as in boy. And then right here I just turn off the grid so you can see it clearly. So you can tell that they're still there. They're in my scene, right? I can see my bigger objects here, but I cannot select them. And you only see the wires, or what we call the wireframe. So this is, the T is for template. So they're there for your reference. And it helps to do it like this because Maya doesn't calculate to shade everything, so it's a little bit faster if you do it template. So let's say you're animating something here, but you still want to see where the object would be, but you don't want to take up too much space or too much RAM of your computer to analyze all this. Just go ahead, throw them in a layer and say template, and then you can still animate your character coming and sitting down on the box or whatever, just so you don't take up too much memory. And then you click on the T again, and you're gonna notice now it turned into an R. Now R, you can see them now. They're what we call in shaded mode because they're colored gray. But again, you cannot select them. This is what we call, R is for reference. So it's only a reference for you to see, but you cannot touch it until you click on the R again. Now you're going to see it disappears. Now we're back to normal. So everything, you can select things or whatever you want. So again, template, reference, normal. V for visibility, right? If I have this bigger object and I want to remove it from this layer, just select that object you want to remove. Obviously, you got to tell it what object. Right click and you'll see here, remove selected object. So I'm going to click on that. And if I hide it, notice now that big box is no longer part of this layer, right? So if I want to add it again, select it, right click, add selected object, and now there it is. So that is how you use layers on its very basic level. Let me see. You can delete. Usually it'll ask if you want to where is it? Remove selected objects from selected. No. You can delete layer, but I think it'll delete your objects as well. So let me see, delete layer. Alright, no, it didn't delete my objects. Okay, so it just deletes the layer itself. That's cool. So then now we have this layer. Again, I want to delete this. I can empty the layer. Right, if I turn it on and off, now it's empty. And if you want to throw something in there, something else, you can. Again, you want to delete the layer now that it's empty. And we're back to having objects back into just our regular Maya scene. So I'm going to change my background again. So we're back to normal stuff. Alright, so that is how you use the axis and the channel box. Now let's go into a little bit more of the advanced stuff, which is how objects are created. Now, right now we're just throwing objects into our scene, but we're not changing it. We're not creating anything fancy with it. They're just there to see, right? So let me go ahead and delete all of this. I'm going to create a new cube, and I'm gonna change the size. So there it is. Now I'm going to show you how polygons, or how objects, this is an object, how objects are created in any 3D software, almost any 3D software, like 3D Max, Maya, or I think even Blender, who knows, but most 3D softwares create objects using three things: either the vertices, edges, or faces, or polygons. Same thing. So right now we are in what we call object mode, which means you can't do anything. I think, like I said in one of my first introduction tutorials, as simple as it is, either you're modeling is one mode, or the other mode is you are modeling or adjusting. So object mode sounds like it's just an object, right? Like when you point at a pencil, it's just there. It's an object. You can't do anything to it. You cannot change it. But when you go into what we call component mode, component is like the little pieces that make up something. So those are components. And the way that these objects are made from, right? This is an object. Get used to calling it an object or a mesh. You hear that a lot. This mesh, this object, is created from vertices, which are your points here, your edges, which are all of your lines, and your faces, which are the entire squares here. So you have vertices right there, vertex, 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 right? And then you have edges. You have an edge right there, you have an edge there, and then you have faces. So those are the three components that make up an object. So those are like words that you're gonna have to learn, like what object, component, what, brain overload. So component, it's just listen to what the word is. Components is what something is composed of, right? So this object is composed of polygons, edges, and vertices. So I just got to get that into your head. So that's why I'm repeating it. And so when I click here and I go under faces, notice I can select the faces now. I'm not selecting the entire object. So now I am in what you call, I am in component mode, not object mode. So remember, object mode, component mode. Like I said, it's very simple. One, you're modeling and adjusting, you're creating objects. The other one, you're just looking at the model. So one, you're modeling, the other one, you're not modeling. That's simple. That's how as simple as I can break it down. I know it sounds dumb, but that's how it is. So I know it's confusing if you've never opened up Maya. That's why it's pretty crazy. So right now you can see I'm selecting components, so I am in component mode. So anytime you right click and I go into edges, vertex, or faces, you are now in component mode, which means you can affect the object. If I go, you see here it says object mode, that means I'm gonna get out of it and I'm done, and I just want to look at the model. So if I click on it, notice I can no longer select the vertex, the edge, or the face, because again, I am in object mode. I can no longer change it or manipulate. I am no longer modeling. Right click, edge. This is how you access your edges. Alright, so just want to show you before we start moving things around. So this is in component mode again, because now we can pick parts of the cube, right? So that is how you select edges. Right click, vertex. So I'm just holding down right click, and just holding and dragging, and then you can see when I release the right click under vertex, now you can select these little points. You can even click and drag, or you can wait until they sort of highlight and then click on them. And then last one, go down to this vertex face. It'll break things up, so you don't, I normally don't use this one unless you have like duplicated faces. You'll be able to see duplicated faces in here, but again, this is not useful, at least not for me. Go down to faces, and now you can select the entire polygon here, the whole box, or each box, or square I should say. It's not the box, it's the little face here. And then that's it. Don't worry about multi or UV. That's something completely different. And then that's it. So edge, vertex, faces are the three most important ones when you want to model something in Maya. Alright, and then once you're done, you say you're done by going to object mode. So again, you're not modeling anymore. You can only view your model, and this is what you want, right? So now how do we manipulate our objects here? Now that we learn what an object is composed of, now we want to learn how to manipulate it. So if you go to vertex, use the move tool, which was over here, pressing W. Now you can go ahead and change how your object looks, right? You can even use these. So again, nothing big here, just keeping it simple, right? That is how you manipulate your objects. Now let me go into the next one, or it doesn't matter, just go to edge. Same thing, you can select an edge, move it up or down, but you're moving the whole edge. So this edge and that edge is attached to this one, that's why they're moving together, right? So you can see how that works. Control Z to undo, that's what I'm doing right here. So you move it, you don't like it, Control Z, undo. Same thing, you start moving points around. You go, oh, I don't like that. Control Z, undo, undo, undo. Object mode, done. Now shortcut key to lock into your model. Say you're over here, but you have your object selected, obviously. And you want to quickly move your camera, your perspective camera, into that object. Once you have it selected, press F and you'll frame on that object. So F is for frame, right? If you have multiple objects, so if, don't worry about how I get other ones, but if I have this one selected, press F, you'll frame on it. If I select that one over there, press F, I'll frame on it. If I want to see everything, all of my polygons that I have in my scene, you can press A for all, and then it's going to frame on all of your polygons that you have in your scene. So if I move it further away, press A, the camera zooms out further away to catch all of your objects in your scene. If I select one, press F, you'll frame in on that one. Select that one, press F, you frame in on that one. So that is how you navigate quickly. So you can select, frame, rotate. Select, F, rotate. You can do all, rotate on everything. So those are very important for beginners to understand and get used to how to navigate around your perspective viewports. Alright, so just select that, delete it. What else here? My viewport icons and drop down menus. So this is all very important here for beginners. So I'm going to go over all of these icons right here. And then I'm going to go over some of the basic stuff that are located up here. So if you want, take a break. I know it's too much. It's a YouTube video. You can rewind it, pause it. Who knows? It's up to you. See how much you can understand. So, camera. This little icon right here is select camera. If you don't have this icon, by the way, press Control Shift M. Control Shift M as in menu, and that'll pop these icons here. All right. So selecting your camera, all of these views that you're seeing here, I'm pressing F. All of these views, you're being able to view that object based on that camera. So these are, it's not a window, it's more of a camera. So right here, the camera is zooming in and out. So there is a camera on top of this object, and I'm zooming the camera in and out. Same thing with the front. There is another camera on the front of this object, and I'm zooming in and out. Same thing with the side. So these are all different cameras that I have set up. And the cameras actually look like this. Let me see if I can show you. I'll just create one. Now these are Maya's default cameras, like the side, the front, and the top. But this is essentially what they look like, right? So you're actually inside of the camera like this. You're going in, and then you're looking at it from the top. So this will be the top camera. So when you're doing this, you're moving that camera in and out. So it's actually like, think of it as a real camera. That's what it is. So when you want to select that camera, you'll go ahead and click that button. So let me go ahead and create a camera here again. Cameras, camera. My camera is down here. So if I want to look through that camera that I created, it's called, you can see here, camera 1. I'm going to change this view to be what my camera sees. So you go to panels, perspective, and then you'll see here camera 1. And then this is what my camera is seeing. You see down here it says camera 1. Watch my perspective here. You can see the camera is right here. But if I zoom out on the camera, See, this is what my camera sees, and this is what my camera is doing. So I can spin around here. Now you can see my camera. So this is actually what you do when this is happening here. Right? So if I deselect the camera and I go into that view where the camera is, this is my perspective. So if I select this camera, it's going to select my perspective camera, not the camera that I'm using. So on this one right here, in this window here, I am using that camera one. So if I click on it, I have selected the camera that I'm viewing this cube through. So obviously it got highlighted in my on this viewport here to show me, hey, look, you selected this camera, right? Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, to change the size of this gizmo, like you think it's too big right now, you press plus and minus on your keyboard side, and then you can change the size of it, something like that. So as I move this camera around, notice it's selected. Now if I want to change my camera settings, you go here to this camera attribute, and then that's going to open up this window where you can change all kinds of camera settings, but I'm not going to get into this right now until later. Alright, now I'm not sure if this will work for our camera bookmarks. I think it will, but let's go ahead and try it. Let's say I'm working on a heavy scene. Let me show you an example here. I'm going to open up my environment, the subway environment. So you guys are going to like this. It's a pretty huge environment. And I'm going to show you how bookmarks work when you have such a large scene. So if I go into the perspective, so here is my very crazy subway explosion scene, right? So let's say I'm working on this column right there that I have selected, and I like this camera angle right here, and I want to save this perspective. So while I'm moving around, I want to quickly come back to this column here. So what I can do is just click on this bookmark, just click on it once, and that's it. Go ahead and do something else, like maybe this cart. Now I'm going to work on this cart. Click on that bookmark, and then this camera view will be saved. So the way that this is useful is you can quickly, let's say I was way over here on something far, right? I don't know where I am in the scene. I'm working over here on some of these benches, and then I go, oh, I gotta work on that column, I forgot. Instead of trying to move my viewport and trying to like walk my way to that column, you already saved the camera in that location. So you can right click on bookmarks, and you're gonna see camera 1 and then camera view 2. So camera view 1, guess what? It's for the column. Right click on it again. Camera view 2 is going to take me where? To that cart. So I can very quickly just snap my camera to those locations that I have saved. Right, so this is very useful. And again, you can go right click, edit 2D bookmarks, and then camera 1, I can call it like column, and then camera view 2, I can call it cart. So now when I right click on it, see column, right click, cart, right click, column, and that's how it works. And you can also delete them, so you can select here, say delete, or you can add to shelf. So if I add to shelf, it's gonna add a button up here on my shelf, which I can quickly just click on it, and again it's gonna move my camera. So bookmarks are very useful. Next thing, where am I? Image plane, that's the same thing. Like if you guys saw my modeling a ninja tutorial, it's the same thing as going into image plane, import image. So it's no difference. That I never used 2D pan zoom. If you guys use it, it's awesome, but if not, it's alright. Let's see here. The next one is the drawing tool, which is, let me pop this open. Let me see if it works under viewport 2.0. So in order to start drawing on your viewport, you have to select this add frame, and then it's going to add a little like a notepad ability depending on what frame you're on. So if I go ahead and click add, I should be able to draw on this and make notes and say this is horrible, I like this, I don't like this thing sticking out here, maybe change it over here or something, I don't know. So you can start making notes, and then if I say remove frame, that'll delete everything. You can, whatever you want, you can click on this, change it to be a bigger brush, finer, or a pencil, change the color of it, and then you can erase. Now again, this is like your brushes. If you remember your brushes, holding down B as in brush, and then clicking left and right will adjust your brush size, so you can always adjust that. So that is how that works. Again, delete it, and there you go. Now the rest of this stuff I'm not going to get into right now. It's more for animation. Let's look here. What else is next? What's next? A grid. Obviously this is how you turn on and off your grid. Let me create a new scene here so you guys can see all of this. This is how you turn on and off your grid right here. And then the next thing is, I don't use this next icon, which is film gate. So let me go ahead and open up that same scene. I have a little bench here. I'm going to use this simple bench. Pretty nice bench here. But it did have a texture on it. You can see it's white, because usually when something comes in white, it's telling you, hey, I can't find the textures, help me find the textures. So that's why it's white. Usually Maya will apply the regular gray Lambert when it doesn't have any textures or anything like that. So let's go ahead and, so where is my camera here? I thought I had a camera. Oh no, I did a new scene. So if I was gonna render this and I wanted to see exactly what the camera was gonna see when I create this into a nice lit image, you would have to click on this resolution gate. Resolution gate is exactly what your camera sees when you're gonna render. So this is what I would render out. So you see everything inside of this gray square is what we're gonna get when we render this. So when we create this image, right, don't worry about how to create that render, we'll get into that later, but everything inside of this frame, it's exactly that's inside of this gray frame here. So this is always very useful when you're ready to create your movie and you want to see how your movie is gonna look. Click on this resolution gate. Next one is the gate mask. So the mask is this light gray that you see here. If you don't want to see that, you can turn it off. You still get that little that frame around that tells you what you're gonna render, but if you're not sure what you're gonna see or not, I like to leave that on. Next button is this grid. You can use this grid however you like. It doesn't move depending on how you move your perspective. It's always put on the camera, but usually I like to use this for when I'm doing character animation and I have like the hips moving up and down, and I want to remember like the hips were at 4, maybe they came down to like 3.5, and then back up to 4. Things like that. It's up to you how you want to use it. You don't have to, but it's there for help. The next button is Safe Action. So Safe Action, you see another little frame pop inside of that render frame. So Safe Action is exactly what it says. When you have characters and you're animating them, you typically want to make sure that all of your characters, like his head, his shoulders, and everything, are within that safe action. Now, not always you can, there's rules for that, but for beginners, just, you can keep everything within that frame. It just makes it more clean to work with. Title safe, click on that one. You get another border frame, even smaller than the safe action and the resolution gate. So in here, because it's safe title, it means whenever you're going to write something, you want to make sure that it is inside of that square. So not from here out, but from here in, right? From here in, you want to make sure that when you write something, it's within these lines. Because if you start writing and you start putting it out over here towards the edge, you'll notice that your text, like let's say you're putting it on a television, right? You made it into a movie, your text will look too squished into the edge of the television. So you want to make sure that it's readable. Like you've never seen a movie that has, starring Brad Pitt and his name is like squished all the way on the corner of the TV. That's because you want to make sure that you have title saved. So title save will make sure that you can read, everybody's name in the credits and things like that. So always make sure you have those on. Not that. And then the next one is wireframe. So wireframe obviously is like chicken wire. You can see your model in wireframe mode. Or the next button is smooth shaded. So this is what we call smooth shaded. Is it has some color to it, at least the very basic default color. And then this new one, this is available only in Maya 2015. This is even if you apply a shader, Maya now recognizes that as sort of a texture, and you can set it back to default gray Lambert. So for example, if I very quickly add a new material to this and I make it yellow, right? Let's say that's the color of it. Before, when you press 6, if you're familiar with Maya, pressing 6 was like how to toggle your textures on and off, which is this button right here, right? Now, this shader is not a texture, it's a material. But now Maya 2015, it allows you to recognize that shader and say, okay, you don't want to see shader colors? Okay, I'll make it into default gray. So when you click on this, it'll turn your yellow shader into now a default. So you can see here it says use default material. Even though it's just a shader, it's not a texture. So it'll recognize your material and say, okay, default. So that's the new feature here in Maya 2015. And then now this one is shaded mode or a shaded view with wireframe. So this is pretty useful when you're modeling a head, or you're still in the modeling phase. You want to see your model shaded, but you also want to see the wireframe on top of it. So keep this one in mind. And then this one, like I said, once you have textures or photographs applied to your models to look realistic, like this was a bench, I wanted to make it look like wood, then I would turn on my texture so that I can see that. And if I wanted to see it back gray, I would turn off my textures and it would go back to looking like this. So that's pretty useful. Next button is use all lights. Now this is just to simulate your lighting in the viewport. When you have your lights in here, let me see if I can create a light. Directional. Now I think this only works in like viewport 2.0. I'm not sure, so I would turn on my light. So you can see it's using my light now. So if I move this around, you're gonna see the lights here. And if I go into shadows, you're gonna see some shadows on here, which is pretty nice. It's trying to calculate this. It's not real time. This is not what it's gonna look like. And like once you create it into a really nice image, or what we call when you render this, but it gives you an estimate of where the shadows are located. So this is okay as a sample. Turn off shadows, turn off your lights. So now it's default. And then ambient occlusion is kind of like self-shadowing, but now let me turn that off and turn this, oops, the wireframe. So you can see it's kind of like it adds these soft shadows into the corners, which is pretty neat. Even now for a viewport, ambient occlusion is what they have here. So you know, you can use it if you like. It's just for viewing purpose only. Then you have motion blur. Again, this simulates motion blur. If you have something animated fairly quickly, you'll see motion blur now in your viewport. I think they even had this way before in other versions. Anti-aliasing, this will turn your, you see these, if I zoom in here to the corner, or I should say the edge, you see these jaggedy edges. Let's see, you can turn this off. You should be able to see it. Let me change my background. So you see how this edge is kind of like, see little steps, kind of jaggedy. If I click this anti-aliasing, it'll try and smoothing this out. So look at this edge right here when I click on it. So you can see it try to smooth it out. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to upload it in HD. So if I toggle this on and off, on, off, on, off, you'll see how this edge just becomes really, really smooth. So again, that's if you would like to see that in your viewport only, you're going to have to change the settings once you render it. And then you have blur, depth of field blur. So let me change the color again, and let me show you how this works. It looks cool, but you know, again, it's just for viewing purpose only. So you have two objects here. Now, I don't know why you would want to use this, but you click on this depth of field and it'll add blur to everything. But as soon as you select an object, it'll make that object in focus. So there you can see how now this bench is focused, but this cylinder up back here is blurred. So if I deselect, now both of them are blurred. If I select the cube, it's still kind of blurred, but it just makes it a little bit more sharper once you select it, right? It's kind of like that depth of field cinematic look. But you know, I never use it, but it's there if you want. The next tool that we're going to look at is isolate selection. So obviously, like when you saw that subway environment, you have so many things in the environment that if I wanted to focus on one thing, the rest of the model around it would just get in the way. So if I want to just focus on one part of the model, I can select it. So say I wanted to model this, right? And I'm turning here and I'm like, I want to get in here, but this bench is in the way as I rotate. So I can click what I want to work on and click isolate selection. Now it only hid, it's hiding the bench temporarily while I work on this, so I can come in here and, you know, refine it however I want. Doesn't matter. Go back to object mode and then get out of isolate selection, and then now the bench comes back and everything else will come back. So that is how you use isolate selection. So select it, click it, everything else with this will disappear except what you have selected, and then get out of it, select it again. And then X-ray mode, this is pretty cool. X-ray mode, it's not gonna work if you're in viewport 2.0. You have to go back to like default. Yeah, this default viewport under render. So now you'll be able to see X-ray mode. So this is pretty cool if you're, I don't know, adding joints. If you're starting to go into rigging and you want to see your joints, you can do it that way. So let me go ahead and show you that. So this rig was created by Long Winter Studios. You can check out their full rigs. So here's a little disclaimer. There's a website, Long Winter Studios, and they are our partner now, so I'm pretty happy about that. Woohoo! So check out the rigs, longwinterstudios.com. This is a rig that I purchased from them. Now, if you want to go and look at the, like I said, X-ray mode, you would show the joints. So they are the joints if you're working on something like this. So you can see through. Or you can do it the other way. This little button here will X-ray your joints. So once you have joints, it'll show on top of your model. So this is under your model. You can see through it. Or you want your joints on top of your model. So you're still seeing through it, but only the joints, not through the model. So that's how you would use these. I've never used this X-ray active component. I think only once you select something, it'll make it. So you look over here, you notice how I told you under the layers, you cannot select the character until because remember it's in reference mode. So until you deselect that, now you'll be able to select the mesh. Right, so you can see how this was used for when you're rigging. You don't want your animator to select the mesh, right? So that is how that works. You can still select that. You probably want to turn off joints too. You don't want to select joints. Right, so again, rotate tool and all that stuff I showed you. It's all useful. And I know it's a lot, you know, my voice is running out. I've been like, I did the webinar this morning and then I'm doing this other tutorial just to make it go a little bit faster. So I think next week or next Saturday, which is, let me look at the calendar here, Saturday the 4th, it's October the 4th, I should say. I'm going to make another webinar using the modeling toolkit. So if you guys want to learn how to start shaping all these little objects here, all these little objects into something more useful, you take all your primitives or these basic shapes and you start designing them and morphing them into whatever it is you have in your mind. So you can create swords, knives, you know, guns, houses, cars, you know, it doesn't matter, characters. So you can see how this character was, let me turn her. You can see how this character is full of edges and vertices, polygons. So you'll be able to start creating whatever it is that you have in your mind. So next webinar, I'm going to be looking at what we call the modeling toolkits, all of this stuff. This lesson was only for beginners, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys are interested in learning, because I specialize in character animation and a little bit in rigging, you guys can check out my 2 books that I have out on my website, animationmethods.com. And I also have downloadable videos for rigging and how to do run cycles and stuff like that. So if you guys are ready to jump on this and start learning Maya and take it to the fullest level, so you guys already have the basic knowledge. If you were a beginner, and you should be able to now navigate around Maya. But in the next lesson, like I said in the webinar, or I might make another YouTube video, I'm going to show you how to begin modeling. So I'm going to be able to come in here and just start extruding and creating all these little shapes, right? So that is what I'm going to teach you in the next lesson. So subscribe if you want to get more notifications from Animation Methods, and check out animationmethods.com website and the book. And there's a discount going on right now on the books. You'll get $5 off if you use the code AM500. So like AM as in Animation Methods, capital AM500, animationmethods.com, on the Rigging and Animation Methods book. Alright, so I'll catch you guys later and have fun.